The heavy courtroom doors creaked open and everyone turned to see who had arrived. Instead of a polished attorney in a suit, a teenager in a hoodie and worn sneakers stepped nervously inside, clutching a backpack. A ripple of laughter spread through the gallery. The judge peered over his glasses, eyebrows raised. "Kid," he said with a mocking chuckle, "this isn't a school talent show. You're in the wrong place." People in the back row stifled their laughter. Even the bailiff smirked. But the teenager didn't back down. He walked steadily toward the defense table and placed his bag on the chair. His voice was calm but firm. "Actually, Your Honor, I'm here to represent the defendant." The room erupted in murmurs of disbelief. A couple of people gasped out loud. The judge blinked, then leaned back in his chair, shaking his head with a smirk that said, "This is going to be easy." The judge let out a scoff, flipping through a stack of papers as though the boy's words weren't worth considering. "Represent? What are you, the TikTok lawyer?" His voice dripped with sarcasm. "Sit down before you embarrass yourself." The courtroom chuckled again, this time louder. The opposing attorney leaned back in his chair with a smug grin, already imagining how quickly this would end. To everyone else, the teenager looked hopelessly out of place, an intruder in a world of suits, ties, and legal jargon. But the boy didn't flinch. His eyes stayed locked on the judge as he stepped up to the podium, standing straighter now, his hands steady. When he spoke again, his tone was measured, confident. "With respect, Your Honor, the law doesn't mock ability," he said, each word slicing through the laughter. "It measures results. May I proceed?" The room grew suddenly quiet. The smirks faded. Even the opposing attorney's grin faltered just a little. For the first time since the boy had entered the room, people began to wonder if he was more than what he seemed. The teenager unzipped his backpack and pulled out a neat stack of case files, each one tabbed and highlighted with meticulous precision. He set them on the podium and opened the first folder with calm deliberation. "In the matter before us," he began, his voice steady and clear, "the prosecution has relied on assumptions that directly contradict established precedent. For instance, he cited a case name from memory, rattling off its date and ruling without so much as glancing at his notes. The opposing attorney immediately rose. "Objection, Your Honor, irrelevant." The boy didn't hesitate. On the contrary, he countered smoothly, already flipping to a page in his binder. "It is directly relevant, as it was ruled under circumstances nearly identical to today's." "May I read the holding?" The judge, caught off guard by the boy's precision, waved for him to continue. What followed was a demolition. Every claim the prosecution had presented crumbled under the teenager's relentless analysis. For every objection, he had a case, a statute, or a direct quotation to shut it down. He spoke with the poise of someone far beyond his years, weaving logic and law together in a way that silenced the laughter and replaced it with awe. The opposing attorney's face reddened, his voice cracking as he scrambled to respond. The teenager's replies were crisp, unshakable. The judge leaned forward now, no longer mocking, no longer amused. His pen had stopped moving, his expression narrowing with disbelief. Under his breath, almost as if speaking to himself, he muttered, This kid knows the law better than half the bar." At last, after nearly an hour of relentless argument, the teenager closed his final folder and looked up at the bench. The silence in the courtroom was heavy, broken only by the soft shuffle of papers. From the court reporter, he took a measured breath before speaking. "Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself. The prosecution's case isn't just weak, it's untenable. And by both statute and precedent, the only lawful ruling is dismissal." The opposing attorney tried to rise, but the words caught in his throat. His earlier smirk was long gone, replaced by a pale expression of defeat. The judge sat back in his chair, arms crossed, his eyes locked on the teenager. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, with a mix of irritation and reluctant admiration, he asked, "Just who exactly are you, son?" The boy straightened, his voice steady. "For the record, I passed the bar exam at 15. Today was my first opportunity to argue in a real courtroom." Gasps swept through the gallery. A woman in the front row actually dropped her purse. The judge's face turned red as the weight of his earlier mockery hung in the air. Adjusting his glasses, he cleared his throat and declared in a firmer voice than before, "Case dismissed." Then, after a pause, he leaned forward and added quietly, almost humbled, "And young man, remind me never to underestimate you again." The room erupted in stunned applause. Some clapped hesitantly at first, then with growing enthusiasm. The teenager didn't bask in it, he simply gathered his files, slid them neatly back into his backpack, and walked toward the exit with calm composure. Every pair of eyes followed him, not as a boy in a hoodie anymore, but as a force of intellect no one in that room would ever forget.